The Garden Party. Adapted by Katherine Mansfield. And after all, the weather was perfect. They could not have had a better day for a garden party, even if they had asked for it. No wind, warm, the sky without a cloud. Only the blue sky was covered with a soft gold mist, like it sometimes is in early summer. The gardener had been up since early morning, cutting the grass and sweeping it, until the grass and the flat dark circles where the daisy plants had been looked shiny. As for the roses, you could not help feeling that they new roses are the only flowers that impress people at garden parties, the only flowers that everyone is sure to recognise. Hundreds, yes, really hundreds, had bloomed in one night. The green bushes bent down as if angels had come to visit them. Breakfast was not yet finished when the men came to set up the marquee. "Where do you want the marquee put, Mother?" "My dear child, there's no use asking me. I'm decided to let you children do everything this year. Forget that I'm your mother. Treat me like an honoured guest." But Meg couldn't possibly go and tell the men what to do. She had washed her hair before breakfast, and she sat drinking her coffee in a green headscarf, with a dark wet curl stuck to each cheek. Jose, the butterfly, always came down in a silk underskirt and a light jacket. "You'll have to go, Laura. You're the artistic one." Away, Laura ran, still holding her piece of bread and butter. It felt so nice to have a reason to eat outside, and besides, she loved being the one to arrange things. She always felt she could do it much better than anyone else. 4 men in rolled-up shirts stood together on the garden path. They carried poles covered with rolls of canvas, and they had large tool bags hanging on their backs. They looked serious and important. Laura now wished she wasn't holding the bread and butter, but she had nowhere to put it, and she couldn't throw it away. She blushed and tried to look serious, and even a little bit short-sighted as she walked up to them. "Good morning," she said, copying her mother's voice, but it sounded so fake that she felt embarrassed and stammered like a little girl. "Oh, have you come? Is it about the marquee?" "That's right, miss," said the tallest man, a thin, freckled one. He shifted his tool bag, pushed back his straw hat, and smiled down at her. "That's about it." His smile was so easy, so friendly, that Laura relaxed. What nice eyes he had, small, but such a dark blue. And now that she looked at the others, they were smiling too. "Cheer up, we won't bite," their smiles seemed to say. How very nice workmen were, and what a lovely morning. But she mustn't mention the morning. She needed to stay focused. The marquee. "Well, what about the lily lawn? Would that work?" And she pointed to the lily lawn with the hand that didn't hold the bread and butter. The men turned and looked in that direction. A short, round man pushed out his lower lip, and the tall man frowned. "I don't like it," he said, "not easy enough to see. You see, with something like a marquee," and he turned to Laura in his friendly way, "you want to put it somewhere where it really catches your eye, if you know what I mean." Laura's good manners made her wonder for a moment if it was polite for a workman to say something about catching the eye like that. But she did understand what he meant. "A corner of the tennis court," she suggested. "But the band's going to be in one corner." Going to have a band, are you?" said another workman. He looked pale and tired as his dark eyes looked across the tennis court. What was he thinking? "Only a very small band," said Laura softly. Maybe he wouldn't mind so much if the band was very small. But the tall man cut in. "Look here, miss, that's the place. By those trees, over there, that will be perfect." By the caraca trees. That meant the caraca trees would be hidden, and they were so beautiful, with their wide, shiny leaves and bunches of yellow fruit. They looked like the kind of trees you imagined growing on a desert island, tall, proud and quiet, lifting their leaves and fruit to the sun in silence. Did they have to be hidden by a marquee? Yes, they did. The men had already picked up their poles and were heading to the spot. Only the tall one stayed behind. He bent down, picked a piece of lavender, brought it to his nose between his thumb and finger, and breathed in the smell. When Laura saw that, she forgot all about the caraca trees. She was surprised that he cared about things like that, about the smell of lavender. How many men that she knew would do such a thing? Oh, how wonderfully kind and thoughtful workmen were, she thought. Why couldn't she be friends with workmen instead of the silly boys she danced with and saw at Sunday night suppers? She would get along much better with men like these. It's all because, she decided, as the tall man drew something on the back of an envelope, something that was to be tied up or left hanging, of these silly class differences. Well, as for her, she didn't feel those differences, not at all, not even a little bit. And now she heard the chock-chock sound of wooden hammers. Someone was whistling. Someone called out, "Are you right there, matey? Matey!" How friendly that sounded. How just to show how happy she was, and to show the tall man how comfortable she felt, and how she didn't care about silly rules. Laura took a big bite of her bread and butter while she looked at the little drawing. She felt just like a working girl. "Laura, Laura, where are you? Telephone, Laura!" a voice called from the house. "Coming!" Away she ran, across the lawn, up the path, up the steps, across the veranda, and into the porch. In the hall, her father and Laurie were brushing their hats, getting ready to go to the office. "I say, Laura," said Laurie quickly, "you might take a look at my coat before this afternoon. See if it needs pressing." "I will," she said. Suddenly she couldn't help herself. She ran up to Laurie and gave him a quick little hug. "Oh, I do love parties, don't you?" gasped Laura. "Rather," said Laurie in his warm, cheerful voice, and he gave his sister a gentle squeeze and a little push. "Run to the telephone, old girl." The telephone. "Yes, yes, oh yes. Kitty, good morning, dear. Come to lunch?" "Do, dear. I'd love it, of course. It will just be a simple little meal, just sandwich crusts, broken meringue shells, and whatever's left over. Yes, isn't it a perfect morning? Your white dress? Oh, I think you should wear it. One moment. Hold on. Mother's calling." And Laura leaned back. "What, Mother? I can't hear." Mrs. Sheridan's voice floated down the stairs. "Tell her to wear that sweet hat she wore last Sunday." "Mother says you're to wear that sweet hat you had on last Sunday. Good. 1 o'clock. Bye-bye." Laura put down the receiver, stretched her arms over her head, took a deep breath, stretched again, and let her arms fall. "Huh," she sighed. And right after the sigh, she sat up quickly. She stayed very still, listening. All the doors in the house seemed to be open. The house was full of soft, quick footsteps and voices calling. The green baize door that led to the kitchen area swung open and shut with a quiet thud. And now there came a long, silly sound. It was the heavy piano being moved on its stiff wheels. But the air, if you stopped to notice, was the air always like this? Little light winds were playing chase, coming in through the tops of the windows, going out the doors. And there were 2 tiny spots of sunshine, one on the ink pot, one on a silver photo frame playing too. Lovely little spots, especially the one on the ink pot lid. It was quite warm, a warm little silver star. She felt like kissing it. The front doorbell rang, and she heard the sound of Sadie's printed skirt brushing the stairs. A man's voice spoke softly. Sadie answered carelessly, "I'm sure I don't know. Wait, I'll ask Mrs. Sheridan." "What is it, Sadie?" Laura came into the hall. "It's the florist, Miss Laura." It was indeed. There, just inside the door, stood a wide, shallow tray full of pots of pink lilies. No other kind, only lilies, canna lilies, big pink flowers, wide open, glowing, almost scarily alive on bright red stems. Oh, Sadie," said Laura, and the sound was like a little moan. She crouched down as if to warm herself at that fire of lilies. She felt like they were in her fingers, on her lips, growing in her heart. "It's some mistake," she said softly. "Nobody ever ordered so many. Sadie, go and find Mother." But at that moment, Mrs. Sheridan joined them. "It's quite right," she said calmly. "Yes, I ordered them. Aren't they lovely?" She gently pressed Laura's arm. "I was passing the shop yesterday and I saw them in the window. And I suddenly thought, for once in my life, I'll have enough canna lilies. The garden party is a good excuse." "But I thought you said you didn't mean to interfere," said Laura. Sadie had gone. The florist's man was still outside at his van. Laura put her arm around her mother's neck, and gently, very gently, she bit her mother's ear. "My darling child, you wouldn't want a mother who was always sensible, would you? Don't do that. Here's the man. He carried more lilies, another whole tray. Pile them up just inside the door on both sides of the porch, please, said Mrs. Sheridan. Don't you agree, Laura? Oh, I do, Mother. In the drawing room, Meg, Jose, and good little Hans had finally managed to move the piano. Now, if we put this couch against the wall and move everything else out of the room except the chairs, don't you think? Quite. Hans, move these tables into the smoking room and bring something to clean these marks off the carpet and... One moment, Hans. Jose loved giving orders to the servants, and they loved obeying her. She always made them feel like they were acting in a play. Tell Mother and Miss Laura to come here at once. Very good, Miss Jose. She turned to Meg. I want to hear what the piano sounds like, just in case I'm asked to sing this afternoon. Let's try This Life is Weary. Pom ta 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 tita. The piano burst out so loudly and with such feeling that Jose's face changed. She put her hands together. She looked sad and mysterious as she looked at her mother and Laura walking in. This life is weary. A tear, a sigh, a love that changes. This life is weary. A tear, a sigh, a love that changes. And then, goodbye. But at the word goodbye, and even though the piano now sounded more emotional than ever, Jose's face suddenly lit up with a bright, terribly uncaring smile. Aren't I singing well, Mummy? She said, smiling proudly. This life is weary. Hope comes to die. A dream awakening. But now Sadie interrupted them. What is it, Sadie? If you please, ma'am, Cook wants to know if you have the flags for the sandwiches. The flags for the sandwiches, Sadie, repeated Mrs. Sheridan dreamily, and the children could tell by her face that she had forgotten them. Let me think. Then she said to Sadie firmly, Tell Cook I'll give them to her in 10 minutes. Sadie left. Now, Laura, said her mother quickly, come with me into the smoking room. I've got the names written somewhere on the back of an envelope. You'll have to write them out for me. Meg, go upstairs right now and take that wet thing off your head. Jose, go finish getting dressed this instant. Do you hear me, children, or shall I have to tell your father when he comes home tonight? And Jose, please calm Cook down if you go into the kitchen, will you? I'm scared of her this morning. The envelope was finally found behind the dining room clock, though Mrs. Sheridan had no idea how it got there. One of you children must have taken it out of my bag, because I clearly remember cream cheese and lemon curd. Have you done that? Yes. Egg and... Mrs. Sheridan held the envelope away from her. It looks like mice. It can't be mice, can it? Olive, pet, said Laura, looking over her shoulder. Yes, of course, Olive. What a horrible combination it sounds. Egg and olive. They finished at last, and Laura took the list to the kitchen. She found Jose there calming the cook, who didn't look scary at all. I have never seen such beautiful sandwiches, said Jose's excited voice. How many kinds did you say there were, Cook? 15? 15, Miss Jose. Well, Cook, I must say, you've done a great job. Cook swept up the crusts with the long sandwich knife and gave a big smile. Godbers has come, said Sadie, coming out of the pantry. She had seen the man walk past the window. That meant the cream puffs had arrived. Godbers was famous for their cream puffs. No one ever thought of making them at home. Bring them in and put them on the table, my girl, ordered Cook. Sadie brought them in and went back to the door. Of course, Laura and Jose were much too grown up to really care about things like that. Still, they couldn't help agreeing that the cream puffs looked very tempting. Very. Cook began arranging them, brushing off the extra icing sugar. Don't they remind you of all the parties you've ever had? Said Laura. I suppose they do, said practical Jose, who never liked remembering the past. They do look beautifully light and fluffy, I must say. Have one each, my dears, said Cook in her warm, kind voice. Your ma won't know. Oh, impossible. The idea of eating cream puffs so soon after breakfast. Just thinking about it made them shiver. Still, 2 minutes later, Jose and Laura were licking their fingers with that focused, dreamy look that only comes from whipped cream. Let's go into the garden, out the back way, said Laura. I want to see how the men are getting on with the marquee. They're such very nice men. But the back door was blocked by Cook, Sadie, Godber's man and Hans. Something had happened. "Tug, tug, tug!" clucked Cook like a worried hen. Sadie had her hand pressed to her cheek as if she had a toothache. Hans's face was tight as he tried hard to understand. Only Godber's man seemed to be enjoying himself. It was his story to tell. "What's the matter? What's happened?" "There's been a terrible accident," said Cook. "A man was killed." "A man killed? Where? How? When?" But Godber's man wasn't about to let anyone steal his story. "Know those little cottages just below here, miss?" Did she know them? Of course she did. "Well, there's a young man living there, name of Scott, a cart driver. His horse got scared by a big engine at the corner of Hawk Street this morning, and he was thrown off, landed on the back of his head. Killed." "Dead!" Laura stared at Godber's man. "Dead when they picked him up," said Godber's man with a kind of enjoyment. "They were carrying the body home as I came up here." And he said to the cook, "He's left a wife and 5 little children." "Jose, come here." Laura grabbed her sister's sleeve and pulled her through the kitchen to the other side of the green baize door. There she stopped and leaned against it. "Jose," she said, shocked. "How are we going to stop everything?" "Stop everything, Laura?" cried Jose, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Stop the garden party, of course." Why was Jose pretending? But Jose was even more surprised. "Stop the garden party? My dear Laura, don't be silly. Of course we can't do anything like that. Nobody expects us to. Don't be so dramatic." "But we can't possibly have a garden party when a man has just died outside the front gate." That really was a dramatic thing to say, because the little cottages were in a lane by themselves, at the very bottom of a steep hill that led up to the house. A wide road ran between. Still, they were far too close. They were very ugly to look at, and they didn't belong in that nice neighbourhood at all. They were small, poor houses painted a dark brown. In their gardens there was nothing but old cabbage stalks, sick hens, and empty tomato cans. Even the smoke from their chimneys looked poor. It came out in little bits and wisps, so different from the big silver clouds that floated up from the Sheridans' chimneys. Washerwomen lived in the lane, and chimney sweeps, and a shoemaker, and one man whose house was covered all over the front with tiny bird cages. Children ran all over. When the Sheridan children were young, they weren't allowed to go there because of the bad language and the risk of catching something. But now that they were grown up, Laura and Laurie sometimes walked through when exploring. It was dirty and unpleasant. They always left with a shiver. But still, one had to go everywhere. One had to see everything. So they went through. "And just think what the band would sound like to that poor woman," said Laura. "Oh, Laura!" Jose was starting to get really annoyed. "If you're going to stop a band from playing every time someone has an accident, you'll have a very hard life. I feel just as sorry about it as you do. I feel just as sad." Her eyes became cold. She looked at her sister the same way she used to when they were little and fighting. "You won't bring a drunken workman back to life by being emotional," she said quietly. "Drunk? Who said he was drunk?" Laura turned on Jose angrily. She said just like she used to during their childhood fights, "I'm going straight up to tell Mother." "Do, dear," said Jose sweetly. "Mother, can I come into your room?" Laura turned the big glass doorknob. "Of course, child. Why, what's wrong? Why do you look so red?" And Mrs. Sheridan turned around from her dressing table. She was trying on a new hat. "Mother, a man's been killed," Laura began. "Not in the garden," her mother interrupted. "No, no." "Oh, what a scare you gave me." Mrs. Sheridan sighed in relief, took off the big hat and held it on her knees. "But listen, Mother," said Laura. Out of breath, almost choking, she told the terrible story. "Of course we can't have our party, can we?" she begged. "The band and all the people coming. They'd hear us, Mother. They're almost our neighbours." To Laura's surprise, her mother acted just like Jose. It was even harder because she seemed amused. She didn't take Laura seriously. "But my dear child, use your common sense. We only heard about it by chance. If someone there had died in the usual way, and I don't understand how they stay alive in those tiny little houses, we would still be having our party, wouldn't we?" Laura had to say yes to that, but it still felt wrong. She sat down on her mother's sofa and pulled at the edge of a cushion. "Mother, Isn't it really terribly unkind of us? She asked. Darling. Mrs. Sheridan got up and walked over to her, holding the hat. Before Laura could stop her, she had placed it on her head. My child, said her mother, the hat is yours. It's made for you. It's far too young for me. I've never seen you look so beautiful. Look at yourself. And she held up her hand mirror. But mother, Laura started again. She couldn't look at herself. She turned away. This time Mrs. Sheridan lost her patience, just like Jose had. You are being very silly, Laura, she said coldly. People like that don't expect us to make sacrifices, and it's not very kind of you to ruin everyone's fun the way you're doing now. I don't understand, said Laura, and she walked quickly out of the room into her own bedroom. There, quite by chance, the first thing she saw was this lovely girl in the mirror, wearing her black hat with gold daisies and a long black velvet ribbon. She had never thought she could look like that. Is mother right? She thought, and now she hoped her mother was right. Am I being too dramatic? Maybe it was too much. For a moment she saw again that poor woman and the little children and the body being carried into the house. But it all felt unclear, not real, like a picture in a newspaper. I'll think about it again after the party is over, she decided. And somehow that seemed like the best plan. Lunch was finished by 1:30. By 2:30 they were all ready for the big event. The band, dressed in green coats, had arrived and was set up in one corner of the tennis court. My dear, sang Kitty Maitland, aren't they just too much like frogs for words? You should have placed them around the pond with the conductor standing on a leaf in the middle. Laurie arrived and waved to them as he headed off to change. When Laura saw him, she remembered the accident again. She wanted to tell him. If Laurie agreed with the others, then it must be all right, and she followed him into the hall. Laurie! Hello? He was halfway up the stairs, but when he turned around and saw Laura, he puffed out his cheeks and made his eyes big at her. My word, Laura, you look amazing, said Laurie. What a really fantastic hat. Laura said softly, Is it? And smiled up at Laurie and didn't tell him after all. Soon after that, people began arriving in groups. The band started playing. The hired waiters ran back and forth from the house to the marquee. Everywhere you looked, there were couples walking, leaning down to smell the flowers, saying hello, and moving across the lawn. They looked like bright birds that had landed in the Sheridans' garden just for this one afternoon, on their way to... where? Ah, how wonderful it is to be with people who are all happy, to shake hands, kiss cheeks and smile into each other's eyes. Darling Laura, how lovely you look. What a beautiful hat, child. Laura, you look quite Spanish. I've never seen you look so striking. And Laura, glowing, answered softly, Have you had tea? Won't you try an ice? The passion fruit ones are really quite special. She ran to her father and asked, Daddy darling, can't the band have something to drink? And the perfect afternoon slowly blossomed, slowly faded, slowly came to an end. Never a more delightful garden party. The greatest success. Quite the most. Laura helped her mother say goodbye to the guests. They stood side by side in the porch until it was all over. All over, thank goodness, said Mrs. Sheridan. Find the others, Laura. Let's go and have some fresh coffee. I'm so tired. Yes, it was very successful. But oh, these parties, these parties. Why must you children insist on giving parties? And they all sat down in the empty marquee. Have a sandwich, Daddy dear. I wrote the flag. Thanks. Mr. Sheridan took a bite, and the sandwich was gone. He took another. I suppose you didn't hear about the awful accident that happened today, he said. My dear, said Mrs. Sheridan, holding up her hand. We did. It almost ruined the party. Laura wanted us to cancel it. Oh, Mother. Laura didn't want to be teased about it. It was a terrible thing, though, said Mr. Sheridan. The man was married too, lived just down the lane, and they say he leaves behind a wife and 6 little children. An awkward little silence followed. Mrs. Sheridan played with her cup. Really, it was very rude of Father to bring that up. Suddenly she looked up. On the table were all the sandwiches, cakes and cream puffs, uneaten, about to go to waste. She had one of her bright ideas. I know, she said. Let's make a basket. Let's send that poor woman some of this perfectly good food. At the very least, it'll be a lovely treat for the children. Don't you think so? And she's sure to have neighbours stopping by. How nice to have everything already prepared. Laura! She jumped up. Go get me the big basket from the cupboard under the stairs. But, Mother, do you really think that's a good idea? Said Laura. Again, how strange. It felt like she was different from the rest of them, to take leftovers from their party. Would the poor woman even want that? Of course, what's wrong with you today? A little while ago you were the one telling us to be kind, and now… Oh well. Laura ran to get the basket. Her mother filled it up until it was overflowing. Take it yourself, darling, said her mother. Run down just as you are. No, wait, take the arum lilies too. People from that class are so impressed by arum lilies. The stems will ruin her lace dress, said practical Jose. So they would. Just in time. Only the basket then. And Laura, her mother followed her out of the marquee. Don't, whatever you do. What, Mother? No, better not put such ideas into the child's head. Nothing. Run along. It was just starting to get dark as Laura closed the garden gates behind her. A big dog ran past like a shadow. The road shone white, and down below in the hollow, the little cottages were in deep shade. How quiet it seemed after the busy afternoon. Here she was, walking down the hill to the place where a man was lying dead, and she couldn't believe it. Why not? She stopped for a moment, and it felt to her like the kisses, voices, clinking spoons, laughter, and the smell of crushed grass was still inside her. There was no space for anything else. How strange! She looked up at the pale sky, and all she could think was, yes, it was the most successful party. Now she had crossed the wide road. The lane began, smoky and dark. Women in shawls and men wearing old tweed caps walked by in a hurry. Men leaned over the fences. Children played in the doorways. A low humming sound came from the poor little houses. In some of them there was a bit of light, and a shadow moved across the window like a crab. Laura bent her head and walked faster. She wished now that she had worn a coat. How her dress shone, and the big hat with the velvet ribbon. If only it were a different hat. Were people looking at her? They must be. It was a mistake to come here. She had known it was a mistake. Should she turn back now? No, too late. This was the house. It had to be. A small group of people stood outside. Next to the gate, an old woman with a crutch sat in a chair, watching. She had her feet resting on a newspaper. The voices stopped when Laura came close. The group moved aside. It felt like they had been waiting for her, like they knew she was coming. Laura felt very nervous. Tossing the velvet ribbon of her hat over her shoulder, she asked a woman standing nearby, "Is this Mrs. Scott's house?" And the woman, giving a strange smile, said, "It is, my girl." Oh, how she wished she could run away. She actually whispered, "Help me, God," as she walked up the little path and knocked on the door. She wanted to get away from all those staring eyes, or to be hidden in something, even one of those women's old shawls. I'll just leave the basket and go, she thought. I won't even wait for them to take the things out. Then the door opened. A small woman dressed in black stood in the shadows. Laura said, "Are you Mrs. Scott?" But to her shock, the woman replied, "Come in, please, miss," and the door was closed behind her. "No," said Laura, "I don't want to come in. I only want to leave this basket. Mother sent—" The small woman in the dark hallway didn't seem to hear her. "Come this way, please, miss," she said in a smooth voice, and Laura followed her. She found herself in a poor low kitchen, lit by a smoky lamp. There was a woman sitting in front of the fire. "Em," said the little woman who had let her in. "Em, it's a young lady." She turned to Laura. She said kindly, "I'm her sister, miss. You'll excuse her, won't you?" "Oh, but of course," said Laura. "Please, please don't disturb her. I only want to leave—" But at that moment the woman by the fire turned around. Her face was swollen and red, with puffy eyes and lips. She looked awful. She seemed like she didn't understand why Laura was there. What did it mean? Why was this stranger standing in the kitchen with a basket? What was going on? And the poor face twisted again in sadness. "All right, my dear," said the sister. "I'll thank the young lady." And again she said, "You'll excuse her, miss, I'm sure. and her own swollen face tried to smile politely. Laura just wanted to get out, to leave. She was already back in the hallway, but then a door opened and she walked straight into the bedroom where the dead man was lying. "You'd like to see him, wouldn't you?" said Em's sister, brushing past Laura and going to the bed. "Don't be scared, my girl." Now her voice was soft and caring, and gently she pulled down the sheet. "He looks lovely. There's nothing frightening. Come on, my dear." Laura came closer. There lay a young man, fast asleep. Sleeping so deeply, so peacefully, he seemed far, far away from both of them. Oh, so far, so calm. He was dreaming. Never wake him again. His head rested deep in the pillow, his eyes were closed. They could see nothing now. He was lost in his dream. What did garden parties, baskets, or pretty dresses mean to him now? He was beyond all that. He was wonderful, beautiful. While they were laughing and the band was playing, this amazing thing had happened in the lane. "Happy, happy," said that sleeping face. "Everything is right, I'm at peace." But still, you had to cry, and she couldn't leave the room without saying something to him. Laura gave a loud, childlike sob. "Forgive my hat," she said. And this time, she didn't wait for Em's sister. She found her own way out of the house, down the path, past all those quiet, dark-faced people. At the corner of the lane, she saw Laurie. He stepped out of the shadow. "Is that you, Laura?" "Yes." Mother was starting to worry. Was everything all right? "Yes, it was. Oh, Laurie." She took his arm and leaned close to him. "I say, you're not crying, are you?" asked her brother. Laura shook her head, but she was crying. Laurie put his arm around her shoulder. "Don't cry," he said in his warm, caring voice. "Was it terrible?" "No," sobbed Laura. "It was just wonderful. But Laurie—" She stopped and looked at her brother. "Isn't life—" she began. "Isn't life—" But she couldn't say what life was. It didn't matter. He understood. "Isn't it, darling?" said Laurie.